Welcome to Unit 3, all about the Nutcracker. Let's start with 5 quick facts about the Nutcracker. Number 1, it's the most famous ballet in America. Over 95% of Americans that have seen a live ballet list the Nutcracker as their favorite ballet. The story of the Nutcracker comes from a German tale written by E.T.A. Hoffmann. He wrote it back in the 1800s as just a children's book and fairy tale for German youngsters. The music for the Nutcracker was composed by Peter Tchaikovsky. He also composed other famous ballets, such as Swan Lake and The Sleeping Beauty. Tchaikovsky is a fascinating man. He was actually a lawyer until he decided to quit and compose music full time. Fourth, the first production of the Nutcracker was in Russia. It premiered in the year 1892, so the Nutcracker is over 100 years old. For many American families, it is a holiday ritual and tradition. This is why the Nutcracker is the most well-known ballet of all time. For many families, the official start of the holidays is when they go and see a live Nutcracker production. So now we're going to learn about the characters and the plot of the Nutcracker. Let's start with the 8 main characters. All of these roles would be considered featured dancers. The first is Clara. She is the main character in the Nutcracker. The whole ballet is centered around her. Sometimes her name could be Marie. It depends on the version, but most of the time she's Clara. Next is Fritz, Clara's mischievous little brother. Drosselmeyer is Clara and Fritz's godfather. He's an eccentric, wealthy magician who loves to create dolls and toys, and Clara is his favorite niece and godchild. The Nutcracker. It's first given to Clara from Drosselmeyer as a small wooden doll, but through magic he comes to life in Clara's dream to save her from the King Mouse. He's also known as the Mouse King, the Rat King, but he is the villain, the antagonist of the Nutcracker. He hates the Nutcracker and he is after Clara. Next is the Prince. This is where it gets a little tricky. He was trapped in the body of the Nutcracker, and he is forever grateful to Clara for saving him from the King Mouse. Don't worry, it'll make more sense when we review the plot a little bit later. The Snow Queen. She's the leader, the queen of the land of snow. And then we have the Sugar Plum Fairy, who is the leader of the land of sweets. I know those last 2 things don't make sense, so here we go to talk about the acts. There are 2 acts and many scenes for the Nutcracker. An act divides a play or a ballet or an opera into different sections. So for the Nutcracker, there's 2 big acts. In Act 1, there's 3 scenes. First, the party scene. This is where there's a party going on. Second is called the battle scene. This involves Clara and a lot of other characters that we'll get to later. And third is called the snow scene. This is the land of snow. This is where snowflakes come to life. Then there's Act 2. In Act 2, there's only 1 scene. That is the land of sweets. So again, there are 2 acts and 3 scenes. Remember what a scene is. A scene is how you divide an act. Okay? And now remember, the scene has to do with the scenery. This means you should see these main ideas in the back and sides of the stage. And it'll also mean you'll see the costumes and props. They'll all associate with the theme of the scene. Next, we're going to talk about the plot of the Nutcracker. Before starting, I'd like to note that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of variations on E.T.A. Hoffmann's original story. This plot outline gives a general overview of this popular holiday story with the sole intent to educate others about the story. It is not my intent to include or exclude any person's personal adaptations or creative productions. With that said, it starts Act 1, Scene 1, the party scene. It's Christmas Eve in a German town during the Victorian era. The town's doctor, Herr Stahlbaum, and his family are hosting a holiday party. Very, very familiar. Clara and Fritz are the children of Herr and Frau Stahlbaum. Herr is how you say Mr. in German, and Frau is equivalent to Mrs. Clara and Fritz are just bursting with joy as any kids would be on Christmas Eve. They're with their friends, they're dancing, they're enjoying their gifts and their toys. And then in walks a surprise guest, surprising everybody. It's Uncle Drosselmeyer. And because he likes to be eccentric, he brought wonderful magical toys and gifts for everybody, such as life size dancing dolls, tales of adventure, and then for his favorite niece, a nutcracker. Clara instantly loves this nutcracker. Others kind of only see its ugly exterior and limited possibilities. Clara sees through this to his beauty and his strength. And as Clara's friends look on, she dances with the nutcracker. But on the sidelines, Fritz, her younger brother, is getting jealous. He grabs the nutcracker from Clara. They toss and tug a war back and forth until he gets it, jumps on it, and breaks it. Clara is distraught about her broken nutcracker. Drosselmeyer comes over and calms her down. He fixes her nutcracker, and at this time is when Drosselmeyer puts the magic spell on Clara and her nutcracker. The party ends and all the guests leave. Clara is put to bed, but before she can go to bed, she remembers she left her nutcracker somewhere. She goes to the living room to find him. When she finds him, she gets a little sleepy and falls asleep on the couch. It is during this time, as she sleeps, enters her Uncle Drosselmeyer, where he casts his magic spell. As the clock strikes midnight, Clara wakes up and is startled as everything around her is starting to grow. The Christmas tree grows to 40 stories high. The dolls and toy soldiers become larger than life. And surrounding her are larger than life mice. They are led by the King Mouse. Traditionally, he has 7 heads, but not all productions include this aspect. He is usually large and somewhat grotesque, or if it's more family friendly, they make him very comical. No matter what, the King Mouse is evil, he's bad, and he is after Clara. This is where the Nutcracker, Clara's special Nutcracker, comes to life, and he pledges to save Clara from the evil King Mouse. He leads the army of toy soldiers into battle against the King Mouse and his band of mice. The King Mouse and Nutcracker struggle. First, the Nutcracker is winning, then the King Mouse is winning, until the King Mouse gets a lot of strength and he knocks the Nutcracker to the ground. Struggling to get up, Clara fears for her Nutcracker and distracts the King Mouse by taking off her bedroom slipper and throwing it at him. As the King Mouse turns around towards Clara, the Nutcracker is able to grab his sword, stumble to his feet, and kill the King Mouse. We then transition into Scene 3 of Act 1, called The Land of Snow. Because of Clara's bravery and because she saved the King Mouse, because she saved the Nutcracker from the King Mouse, she is granted a wish. Her wish is to have her Nutcracker turn into a prince, which Drosselmeyer does. She thinks that her Nutcracker has fallen, if not dead, from his bravery in killing the king mouse. But it's not true. She awakens to see him turn into a prince. She is given a crown for her bravery, and it's a crown from the head of the king mouse. As the first part of her gift, the prince takes her through the land of snow to his home, the land of sweets. To get to the land of sweets, he transforms her and travels through the land of snow where Clara meets the Snow Queen and is surrounded by usually 10 to 24 dancing snowflakes. As the scene and act ends, Clara is escorted by sleigh to the land of sweets. Act 2 happens after an intermission if you see it live. An intermission is usually just a break where the audience is allowed to get up and talk and use the restroom, get a brief drink, and then we sit down for Act 2, which is the land of sweets. Let's talk a little bit about the land of sweets. As the name suggests, this land is made up entirely of sweet treats such as candies, pastries, cakes, ice creams, chocolates. Upon the arrival to the land of sweets, the prince introduces Clara to the queen of the land, the Sugar Plum Fairy. After telling their tale again of how the king mouse almost killed the Nutcracker, the Sugar Plum decides to reward Clara and the prince for their bravery. And she orchestrates a celebration where entertainment from the countries around the world dance for Clara and the prince. These dances from around the world, which also represent foods, are called divertissements. Divertissements are a group of dances in one section of an opera or ballet. They are commonly held together by a theme or an occasion. In the Nutcracker, there are two themes for the divertissements of the Nutcracker. They're all going to be associated with a sweet treat, whether it be a food or a beverage, and they're also going to be associated with countries around the world. Remember, this is supposed to be a celebration for saving their beloved prince. Here are the order of the divertissements that are found in Act 2 of the Nutcracker. First is Spanish, or chocolate. It's depicting anything chocolate and is from the country of Spain. The dancers will have movement that are strong and flamenco-esque. Second is called Arabian. It's depicting the treat of coffee and the countries of Arabia. The dancers' movements are often smooth and sultry, such as thick, sweet coffee of the Arabian nations. Third is Chinese, depicting the hot, sweet drink tea from the country China. The movements for this divertissement are quick, sharp, and energetic. Next, we have something called Trepak. It's that very famous piece of music that's very upbeat and was in the movie Home Alone. Trepak, instead of depicting a sweet treat, this divertissement highlights the spirit and joy of the holidays. Trepak is suggestive of the high energy folk dances of Russia. So this divertissement represents the country and enthusiasm of Russia. It makes sense because the composer was Russian. Of course, he's going to highlight his country. Next after that is called marzipan. Marzipan shepherds, marzipan shepherdesses, or sometimes called mirlitons. This depicts the ultra-sweet combination of marzipan, which is finely ground almonds and sugar combined to form a paste. This divertissement highlights the countries of Holland and the Netherlands, Denmark, Belgium. Think of places where shepherds would live out in the fields. Next is bonbons or polichinelles. First is about bonbons. They can depict round, hard candies which are found in France. Or it takes a completely different turn, such as the picture here. The divertissement interweaves the American nursery rhyme that we know, Old Mother Hubbard. Mother Ginger is a woman with a very large skirt. Underneath her skirt houses her very talented children that are circus performers, clowns. The word Polichinelles refers to clowns in France. Last is Waltz of the Flowers, not depicting a food, but instead the beautiful scents of the fields of flowers that grows at different times throughout the spring and summer in Europe. This divertissement has a lead called the Dewdrop Fairy, and she dances and orchestrates her field of flowers. So, how does it all end? The Sugar Plum and her cavalier, that's her guy, they do a final, very romantic dance for Clara and the prince. Then all the divertissements come together and dance together in what's called a finale. They say goodbye to Clara. As Clara starts to wave goodbye to the land of sweets, she wakes up, sometimes in her bed, sometimes still over the land of sweets. She's clutching her nutcracker and remembering, oh my gosh, this special nutcracker brought me all my dreams. It is a story of magic, wonder, celebration, and joy, and I think that's why so many people include it in their holiday traditions. So that's all. Here are the things that you should know, and if you don't, maybe go back and watch those parts again. You should know the year and location of the first production of the Nutcracker. You should know who the composer of the Nutcracker is. You should know why the Nutcracker is so popular in America. You should be able to name the 8 main characters of the Nutcracker: Clara, Fritz, Drosselmeyer, keep going. You should know how many acts there are in the Nutcracker and be able to name the 3 scenes of Act 1 in the Nutcracker. You should know about the land. What's the name of the land that's associated with Act 2 of the Nutcracker? You should know the general plot of the Nutcracker. I hope you enjoyed learning about this, and I hope you'll watch a production of the Nutcracker this holiday season.